Me again. This is the Brox and Max channel. Today's an off day. Got some maintenance to do. Little knick-knacky things, but they have to get done. And you know what? This hasn't been out in a while. I think it'd be pretty handy for this video. We got some forklifts that we bought over the summertime. This one in particular, that one in particular, and it doesn't have a master kill switch. It's pretty important to have all the electrical shut off if you have older equipment or stuff that stands around, because you never know when there's a draw on the battery and you go to use it next time and it doesn't start. And if that is the case, what is drawing? Could there be a potential spark? Anything that could catch fire? It's really important and a really good idea for even new equipment or old equipment, especially old equipment. Put on a master kill switch. It's not that difficult. This video will show the simplicity of it. Obviously a forklift is no big deal to do it, which this is why I felt it was a good thing to do, because other equipment could be sophisticated in trucks in general, but it'll give you the general idea of how to possibly prevent a garage fire. Just spend an hour, maybe half a day even, whatever it would take to just save a lifetime's worth of investment in your tools and stuff in your garage. It's just well worth the effort to do what I'm going to show you. So this is a little, probably, I'd say 1980s, 90s Toyota forklift, and it doesn't have the master kill switch. That's what we're going to focus on right now, and put one in that, and eventually I'll put one in this larger Heister. Even our septic truck has the master kill switch, and eventually the MC, when I finish up the batteries and doing all the battery cables and rerouting and all that, that's going to have a master kill switch. And then just by chance we were doing some work on the big forklift. Even this guy's got a master kill switch. And if you can look through the Heister, even that little guy right there, our little Yale forklift that we used for just hanging stuff and painting parts and this and that. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you know what? That's also got a master kill switch. Very important to have just stuff that's completely disconnected so you don't have any type of fire. All right, so what's going on here? Here is the negative, and here is the positive side of the battery. I've seen it done both ways, that you can have the disconnect on either side, but I always put it on the negative side if I can help it. So that is going to be what I'm going to do right now. And again, being that the ground is literally right here, I'm going to reroute the line and put a master kill switch. Now, probably what everybody's saying is a master kill switch is the most inconvenient thing to have on a machine, because every time you hop in it, you forget about it and then you got to get back out. Well, that's the other part of this little program here. There really isn't many places to put it unless you're going to open up the seat or the hood or whatever you want to call it for a forklift and turn it on. Well, what I'm going to do, being that you have this propane tank that swings out of the way, so I've already figured out what I want to do. You got the propane line that comes up through this little notch here in this plate, and this plate is removable, so I can't mount it to that. But what I'm going to do is just fish leads from the negative side of the battery, and I'll probably mount up a little plate right here for just the switch to be right there, easy, accessible, and out of the way. Nothing is going to hit it. Even when I go to lift the seat up and everything, it'll just be out of the way. Unless I make a liar out of myself, let's see what happens. Okay, as you can see when I just lifted this up, there's not much room for a disconnect switch in this general area without it hitting. So I gotta be aware that I have either a real tight spot right here to mount it. I could put it right up real high so it's a little bit easier, and then just run my maybe some clamps to hold the ground cable on, and everything is just out of the way. Just put it right here. It might look a little funky, but the way forklifts are built, there really isn't a good way to have it. It's not like I can mount it right here. You'll be kicking it all the time. I can't put it on this floorboard because the floorboard is removable. And if I even put a little switch right here, then I gotta run all the leads underneath the floor, go through all that rigmarole to grab the negative side. So to me, it's a lot easier just to put it right there, boom, out of sight, out of mind, right over your shoulder. You can quick switch it on if you're already sitting in the seat, and it's gonna be no issues whatsoever to mount. It'll be pretty easy to do. I might have an hour invested in it. I just have to remake some cables, and that's not the end of the world. You can, if you are incapable or you don't have the tools to remake cables, you can always go to your local truck place that sells truck parts, or a shop that has the crimping tools that can put the battery cable ends on. It's very easy to do. I would not discourage anybody to try to do this. So not to bore you while I quick mask that off and put some primer on it. I know there's some viewers out there that I'm sure would rather watch paint dry than watch my channel. So here's your opportunity. You can do both. Watch my channel and watch paint dry. So while I watch paint dry, this is what I chose to use for the disconnect switch. Grody actually makes it. I'm quite surprised. I thought it was a Cole Hershey thing. I called the parts place. I said I'm going to be putting on a master disconnect, so I don't want junk. So there's a difference. There's junk, not so much junk, and then a little less junk. Because the best one that I've ever used is a brand called Flaming River. That's a really good one. It's for big truck batteries, like a couple 12 volts it would handle, where these can handle one battery. For a forklift, it's just fine. The only difference between not so junk and junk is there's supposedly an O-ring in there to keep the weather out. Not that the forklift's going to be outside, but if I ever decide to wash it down, I don't have to worry about water and stuff getting caught inside this and maybe shorting it out or creating corrosion inside. So if you were to choose, I would suggest don't get the junky one. Get a little less junk. Everything's going together really good. My next plan of attack, while I wait before I put some paint on that one piece, is I'll disconnect this part here, make this cable, actually, you know what I'll do? I'll probably end up doing away with this completely. I'm going to make my own brand new cable, battery cable end included, and run it up to the master switch, and then run a ground. It'll all make sense once I put it together. I have to make basically 2 battery cables, and for it to cycle through its thing to be able to cut the circuit out, basically shutting the power off the machine is the end goal. I'm not brokenhearted anyway to delete this because it was already red in color, which would always throw me off every time I open this hatch up. So I'm all right with just getting rid of this completely and then putting black cable on. So I'll get out my battery crimpers and start looking for some battery cables in the garage here. I see back here there's a cable. that was bolted to the battery cable itself. And being that I'm going to reroute it in a different spot, it's important to put that bolt back. I was just going to delete it completely until I spotted that. So let's put it back on. Tighten it back up. So my goal is to go from this terminal, and I'm going to follow this gas line right up that slot on that piece of sheet metal, and everything will be out of the way. I'll probably clip it to this gas line so that it doesn't rub against anything or whatever, and do all of my work from out from under this general area, because to be honest, I'm pretty sick of being on my knees on the floor working on this already, so I'm happy it's almost done. So I don't know if I lucked out, if you want to call it luck, but I ended up finding upstairs this piece here. Now this is an adapter to go from a regular post top, and then you have a bolt that's molded into the piece of lead. I'm assuming this is lead. You just put this down, and then I found a cable that already had the eyelet on it, and I can just bolt it down, and it's a similar setup to what the positive side has. Very similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this setup because this battery, along with all the series of this size battery, have these side posts also. So if I decided for some stupid reason to not use the post top, I can still use this eyelet and bolt it to the side of the battery here, and it still has clearance for this hood to come down, and it's not going to hit anything. So I'll mount this up, run my cable up through, and then hook up the master disconnect switch. Just pause for a second to paint this real quick. I decided to paint it safety red for one. It's visible, you can see it, and possibly have to remind yourself in case you walk away from it to flip the switch, because the switch is only as good as the operator. There's no sense in having a switch if nobody ever uses it. That's the other slight issue with these, is they're not automatic. You pretty much have to remember every single time. But we've regimented ourselves to make sure that every time we take care of it. Now that I have all the masking tape off, I'd like everybody to have a moment to watch paint dry. Hang on, it's almost dry. Okay, so to me, the hard part is done. Have that welded up, and I have the end cable hooked to the battery. Now all I have to do is make sure I give myself enough room or enough cable to do this, tie it off however I choose to. So I'll cut it here, and then I have a bunch of these eyelets. Obviously it's for a really small cable, so it's not even 2/0, 3/0. It says number 4 stamped in it, so I don't know if that means 4 gauge, but it doesn't matter. So I'll cut this off, and I'll strip it, crimp this on, and then put the master switch on. You have one end that's finished off, and then this has to be grounded to the machine so it can complete its grounding circuit. So what I'll probably end up doing is, this is a real thick piece and it's welded to the frame of the machine. I will just find a hole or tap a thread in there and just put a little short pigtail of cable on it, and then pretty much that job is complete. Of course, I chose about the easiest thing that I could think of. Coincidentally, I had to do it to this forklift, but I have spent probably half a day at least, depending on what the scenario is, whether rerouting cables or hooking up the batteries differently to accept a master kill switch. But it is definitely worthwhile because you just don't want to be there when something short circuits. You don't know, you don't use the machine a lot. I know there's a lot of municipality buildings that trucks catch on fire in the middle of the night when nobody's around, all because they should have just had master disconnects. It's a thing. I truly believe in it, but of course, you got to shut them off too. And then don't forget about the shrink tube. Gotta have shrink tube. That's a pretty important thing. Keeps it out of the weather or keeps just water and moisture out of it. Sometimes you gotta put it on before you crimp the ends on because the ends are too big. So I just make a habit of it. It's pretty much permanent. Will not come off. I choose to use the shrink tube that's extra thick and it's got adhesive inside the tube, so when you warm it up it actually sticks and gets stuck to the copper and you can see it oozing out like kind of like super glue. That's a better setup and I've never had any issues with them, so I use them all the time. So I guess I can put my battery cable crimper and the heat gun away, all my tools. I was looking for some battery cable ends like this one and I couldn't really find anything. And I ran across this. What this is just a jumper in between 12 volt batteries, or just truck batteries. I don't want to just say 12 volt. So what I'm going to do is I'll just mark a hole, drill and tap right here. It's a little bit overkill, but it's factory sealed. I don't have to worry about it. Screw these tight, put that on, and this job is going to be complete. Let's see if it'll start. So that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. Like I said, just simple, hour of my time, make this so it is disconnected completely. You don't have to worry about some type of electrical short or some type of an issue that this just catches on fire when nobody's around. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next one. What's going on here? What did I do wrong? Paint's dry. The video's over with. Ah.